This is Sid Roth saying, I have a vision. Now is the set time to blow the trumpet in Zion.
Blow a trumpet in Zion, sound it on the mountains. Blow a trumpet in Zion, for the day of the Lord is come.
Shalom, Mishpacha. Shalom, family. Mishpacha is a Hebrew word, and it means family. We're the Mishpacha, the family with a Jewish heart, made up of Jewish and non-Jewish people that are one new man in the Messiah. Getting ready, Mishpacha, to blow the grandest shofar, or the grandest trumpet in Zion. We want everyone everywhere to hear the good news. We want everyone everywhere to be red hot for the Messiah. All this week I've been telling you about my life story. And we left on yesterday's broadcast, having been raised in a traditional Jewish home, having been bar mitzvah, having a college degree, having been married, have a child, have a wonderful job at Merrill Lynch. I wasn't happy. I wasn't fulfilled. As a young child, I had a dream, or a vision, really. And a question came to me. What happens when you die? And the answer to the question, because I didn't know anything about heaven or hell, I knew nothing about this. I just thought you ceased to exist. And it was so objectionable, that question, that I blocked it from my mind until many years later. I never thought it was possible. I was a self-made person. I was a positive thinker. But I had been involved in a New Age meditation course. And I realized that that voice I was hearing inside of me was a demon. And I wanted out. I didn't want God. I certainly didn't, as a Jew, I didn't want Jesus. I just wanted out of the mess I was in. I had left my wife and daughter a year earlier. And I had, of course, I love my daughter, and I got together with her about once a week and talk with my wife. But we both had decided we're both going to go our own ways. I hadn't got a divorce. But on the worst night of my life, I had so much fear, I was afraid to go to sleep at night. I was afraid at the least little thing that would happen, the phone would ring. I just remember even today, even though that's almost 30 years ago, I would have so much fear. I couldn't relate to a person with fear before. I couldn't relate to someone that had a nervous breakdown. I was a self-made person. I had read all the positive thinking books. But I had never bumped into this particular challenge. Life was too hard. I wanted out. So I called my wife on the telephone. And I figured anyone that is not Jewish knows Jesus. And my wife was raised a Southern Baptist. When she got to college, she had atheistic professors that talked her out of her faith. She became an agnostic, or as she likes to say, the only reason I wasn't an atheist was I was afraid just in case there was a God. And then she converted to Orthodox Judaism when we got married, because I had insisted upon this. And I called her and I said, I didn't even tell her what was going on. I tell her my spirit is leaving my body and I'm afraid to go to sleep and I'm scared. I still was enough of a macho man, and I also knew she wouldn't be able to even relate or even understand. So I said, Joy, it's bad. It's really bad. Will you pray for me? And she said yes. And I hung the phone up and she hung the phone up. And I didn't know this till later. But she had a kind of conversation with herself. She didn't pray for me, even though she had promised. She went to bed. But then she's a very honest person. And she began wrestling. She said, boy, he sounded desperate. I did promise that I'll pray for him. And although she didn't think it would have any meaning, because she had promised, she prayed for me. And I went to bed that night. And for the first time in my life, I preferred not waking up. Life was too hard. Death looked easier than life. I literally gave up. I'd seen enough vampire movies, so I had a Bible. I put it under my pillow. I went to a Jewish bookstore and I bought a silver mezuzah that has scriptures from Deuteronomy inside of it, and I put it around my neck. Somehow I thought this might help me, but I really didn't. I mean, life was too hard. I gave up. I prayed a prayer, too. My prayer was something like 2 words. It wasn't a classic Billy Graham prayer. It was, Jesus, help. And I went to sleep. I was just exhausted. I just literally gave up. The next morning, I woke up. And I knew something on the inside. I didn't have a dream. I did not have a vision. I didn't even have something communicate with me. But I had a knowing deep inside of me that Jesus was my Messiah. And I had something happen to me that never happened to me in the New Age, or the occult as it was known as back then. I had a peace that surrounded me. I never took drugs, but I can't imagine any high from drugs even coming close to what I had. I had a peace on the inside. I mean, remember, I went to bed, and the fear that I had, it was so real. You could take a knife and you could slice it. It was so bad that I didn't even want to live. That fear was gone. I mean, I had so much peace, I couldn't think about fear. I mean, it just, when you have that much peace, you can't be afraid of anything. And I was just saturated with the love of God. And then I heard something for the first time in my life that I knew it was God. I knew it. And that's what I heard. Return to your wife and daughter. And I have to tell you, I resisted it for a second. Just a split second, because my marriage wasn't good. I didn't want to return. But I was so grateful. That fear was gone. And it had been replaced with something I had never, ever experienced in my life. I wish I'd had a vision. I wish I'd heard a voice. I wish I'd had a dream. I wish Jesus had come to my bedside, even an angel. I wish there had been noise and gongs and everything else, but there wasn't. Because you know what? A few years later, I would have thought, well, maybe I just imagined it. But you see, what happened to me, it's never changed. That knowing is inside of me. And no man can ever take it away from me. That peace is surrounding me. If anything, it's more than it's ever been. And I was so grateful to God that I would have done anything for Him, even return to my wife and daughter. So I did. And God restored my marriage. Do you know that Joyce and I have just celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary? Do you know that my daughter has graduated college and married a godly man, and now I have 3 godly granddaughters? Look at what I almost destroyed. Yes, there really is a devil. I know. I experienced him. But there really is a God. I know. I experience Him constantly. Then I started reading the Bible, and it was like, I don't understand why every Jewish person in the world doesn't believe in Jesus. And I remember going to my mother and father and telling them I believe in Jesus. And my mother still loved me, but my father, he was so hurt and betrayed. See, my father was born in Poland. And he shares the stories of being with his father, my grandfather, and walking by a church and spitting at the church. And if you've ever studied the horrible history of those that call themselves Christians in reference to Jewish people, you can understand why we Jewish people want nothing to do with Jesus. And to my father, it was a terrific shame. And it got even worse, because I began telling everyone, anything, anyone, anywhere, any circumstances about Jesus is real. Biggest shock I had was most people that called themselves Christians, they believed in Jesus. That's what made them a Christian. But they didn't know him. They just knew about him. They didn't experience him. He was theoretical, like I was with God in Judaism, not even sure that he's really there. And so I began to tell people, you've got to know him for yourself. And not only that, he wants to know you. He desires to know you more than you desire to know him. But the experience that I had with God is available to everyone. And I couldn't keep quiet about it. Look what God did in my life. Although my relationship with my father was strained, my relationship with my mother stayed good. I mean, she would love me no matter what. And boy, did I do it. You'll find out when you read my book. There must be something more. After I graduated from college, I went down to Miami. I got involved with mafia-type people, and I needed money, or they were going to do me in. Well, I thought they would. They didn't say it, but and my mother sent me that money. I mean, I did a lot of crazy things, but my mother still loved me. And she observed my life for many years. And one day she said to me, you know, Sid, I believe in Jesus the same way you do. I used to pray for her. She would get healed. I used to pray. She would grab me and have me pray for all the relatives and all the friends. I remember my Aunt Rosie had diabetes, and they were going to amputate her toe. And the Jewish doctor made the statement, not even Jesus Christ could spare this toe. And that's all my mother had to hear. She came and brought Rosie to me, and I prayed for Rosie. And before a holy God in heaven, Rosie never had her toe amputated. But it was just a little too much for my mother to believe in Jesus until that one day she said, I've seen the change that has occurred in your life and in your marriage and how you're so fulfilled. I want that same experience. And I prayed with my mother. And she became a believer because she knew the Messiah. But my father, again, it was different. And I remember my mother would say, Sid, your dad will never be a believer. And I remember getting angry with her. And I said, don't ever say that. I know Dad will be a believer. I mean, it just blurted out of me. You see, for years, I went around at every meeting. I was talking to people where I was speaking, and I would say, pray for my father. He's going to be a believer. And at first, I just said it. Well, it's according to God's Word. God's Word says it's His desire that all come to know Him. And my father's part of all. But as my mother said, Sid, your father will never believe. But I had said it so much. I had said God's Word so much that I began to believe it. All right, we're out of time. If you want to read the full story, I want you to get a copy of my life story called There Must Be Something More. It's $10, postage paid.
If you would like to receive a complimentary copy of our bi-monthly teaching newsletter, cassette catalog, or information about becoming Mishpocha, write to me, Sid Roth, Post Office Box 1918, Brunswick, Georgia, 31521. Or call our order-only line, 1-800-548-1918. To place a credit card order, call anytime, 1-800-548-1918. For all other calls, the number is 912-265-2500. That's 912-265-2500. For a cassette tape of this week's broadcast, send $5 to Sid Roth, Post Office Box 1918, Brunswick, Georgia, 31521. Look us up on the web, www.sidroth.org. That's www.sidroth.org.